look stressed out, to be honest, but maybe that's just the general state of being when they're playing. I don't know. We are actually in the game now, guys, and this should be a very good one. It's also the elimination, so it's a stressful one for them. It's kind of stressful for me, to be honest. ByuN is my favorite Terran when he was winning that BlizzCon, and DongRaeGu was my favorite Zerg back when he was winning IEM New Yorks. So I really don't know who to vote for, honestly, with my heart. So I'm just going to watch this unfold. Our first map is Lightshade. In the top left, he is the blue Terran, ByuN.
And in the bottom right side of Lightshade, then we are of course looking at the main base of our Korean Zerg player. It is DongRaeGu.
Both of these guys actually coming back around the same time as well. So they left around the same time, they came back around the same time. And despite having been back in a StarCraft for, I believe, less than a year, actually, they have actually already played each other quite a few times. And it is significantly in favor of ByuN.
Yep, the history between these two is very fun to look at, because the very first time these two ever went up against each other in competitive StarCraft 2 was 2012. Like, that's so long ago. 9 years ago, these guys had an official match against each other. Then they didn't play against each other for 8 years. And over the last 8-9 months, they've played each other all the time, with ByuN actually winning the last 5 encounters in a row. So perhaps some hope and some good news for all the Terran and ByuN fans out there. I do think this is going to be a feisty one, though. We know what DongRaeGu is capable of, and I can't wait to see how it plays out.
DongRaeGu was looking really, really promising, but unfortunately seems to have kind of fallen off, whereas ByuN, obviously looked the most promising with Asus ROG, right? And then kind of fell off after winning a tournament. Anything less than that has fallen off, I suppose. We still saw the games and we saw all the potential. When he got knocked out, he was losing against Cyril, who had kind of maybe figured it out after one of their epic best of fives. But for DongRaeGu, he's still playing well, of course, but it's not quite, he didn't ascend back to what he was in around 2012, where ByuN actually looked like he was ascending back to what he was in 2016. So we're kind of still waiting for that DongRaeGu high. It's kind of what I'm pointing out here. We know ByuN's high is already up there, and usually also comes with this matchup. TVZ is really good for him.
Yep, it's one of these matchups where he can shine, and we know what he's capable of when it comes to just controlling his units. His micro is always out of this world, and in general the timings is not something that he really messes up in this matchup. It's very important for DongRaeGu not to make any slip-ups early on against the Reaper. We don't expect to see that at this level, but these are obviously the little things that ByuN is looking for to get potentially a good start. There's that first creep tumor, but I don't think the Reaper is going to be able to get it.
Nope. It's funny how in this high level, that is actually a pretty important point for them to either ByuN to grab the creep tumor or DongRaeGu to really specifically try to defend it. But it would have been a nice pick-off indeed for ByuN. He doesn't find it, still going to keep his Reaper alive and scouting, and probably just instantly reinforce with his Hellions too, and maybe even try and see if there's an opening if he feels really aggressive. Actually going to go ahead and bop the Queens out of the way and get into that natural and into the main and out back through the third. I think once you saw the drones rallying, you really didn't have to worry.
Yep. Lightshade is one of these maps where once in a blue moon you see the Zerg players make a few more units than they are supposed to make them. ByuN is going for a very safe opening. Hellion, Cloak, Banshee. It is obviously not something that's new, but it is something that just kind of says like, hey, I actually think I'm fine in this matchup. This is about as safe of a Terran opener as you can go for. You obviously want to get some damage with the Hellions and Banshees, but it's much more important to just have those units out on the map, have a good idea what your opponent is doing, and I mean, you're not really in any danger of dying against anything with this opening, are you?
No, you're not. And Lightshade has been popular in the past for roaches, but I was going to say what we're kind of waiting on is if an armory is included. If it wasn't included, then it is just a very safe play, very helpful against any potential future roaches. With an armory, well, we actually saw Euthermal try this in his TVZ, and unfortunately got kind of like a weak start to it. Let's see how ByuN's going to be able to use this attack and gain an advantage. DongRaeGu is getting a very safely timed Baneling Nest, which already bodes well for him, but then it's a matter of having your Queens position as well, right? Not letting things just snowball out of control.
A lot of Spore Crawlers going down too on the side of DongRaeGu. 4 Spore Crawlers, so basically 1 for each mineral line and then even a safety Spore in between the bases. Seems like DRG is pretty damn certain of what he's going up against. That one, actually, how did that Banshee already take so much damage? I guess it was a little bit ahead of the party. Hellions morphing into Hellbats as we speak, trying to get on top of these Queens. I mean, a couple of drones are going down, but I don't hate this defense initially for DongRaeGu. He should keep his Queens alive though.
Yeah, I should do that. I mean, they did run into like all the Queens together. That could be sometimes like a bit of a tricky possibility with this opener. We actually saw Cure do this opener literally 5 times in a row against a Zerg player. And what we learned really, I think it was Solar actually, is that, you know, a lot of the trick of it can be the Banshee gets a surprising amount of damage on drone lines, even when Spore Crawlers are there, because the Spore Crawler doesn't actually cover the entire mineral line. So that kind of happened there. A little bit of a distraction as well, so it's possible the Queens aren't microed or the drones aren't microed. But overall, it's a hold, and he didn't actually have to make Banelings to do that, which is something we should note. It wasn't the most expensive hold.
I don't think it's just a hold, I think it's a very good hold even. I mean, now we are losing a few more drones at the tail end of all of this. It's obviously nice for ByuN that he was able to keep these Banshees alive, but the fact that DongRaeGu was playing a relatively greedy game, only ended up losing 5 drones while picking up the majority of the Hellions. I mean, at this point he's going up to 4 bases, while the third is not even really in location yet for ByuN. You know, in the beginning of the series you said, I'm even feeling a bit nervous to cast this. I'm still not that nervous whenever I see ByuN, even in the lower bracket. I'd love to see him go far because that's just good for StarCraft. I wasn't nervous. I'm starting to get a little bit nervous for ByuN because I'm not really feeling this start.
I know what you mean, but ByuN, he still is. I said that in the TVT as well. It feels like even when he's a little bit behind, it feels like we don't really get to determine that until he starts using his Marines, right? Like the Hellbats and the Banshees weren't even really all in, right? The Marines, the Medivacs, his multi-pronged harassment, that's when we're really going to be able to see if DRG is actually up to ByuN's level or, you know, of course, above him. Which, yeah, currently he's done a very good job with the opening. DRG now needing to worry to spread that creep, get his upgrades, every upgrade on the way, including Burrow. So maybe he was watching that Ragnarok series and like, you know what, that sounds like a really good idea.
Elazer versus Bonnie had a lot of very cool burrowed Banelings as well, as the Zerglings are trying to draw some friendly fire there. Not a bit defense, I'd say, for DongRaeGu, even though he ended up losing a couple of links here and there. Good job by ByuN to not actually pick up, but just hold his ground and actually save these Marines for now. This is starting to look promising. Yeah, Burrow really for me the upgrade of the day. It's always something we talk about. Burrowed Banelings are cool, you can really get a lot of value out of them. Elazer had fantastic hits against Bonnie, and Ragnarok had the absolute best hits against Thermal. Let's see if DongRaeGu can find some success with that upgrade as well.
Perhaps a developing meta. All the Zergs got together and talked about ZVT as well as ZDP, apparently. Another little scuffle here. The Widowmines do get tossed out with the Widowmines, the Banelings, and the Banelings push the Marines back, and ByuN's not really going to find any success over on that left side, which even goes as far to say, like, not much creep was cleaned up. The Banshees on the right side trying to go for a sneaky 5th base cancel, just get destroyed, pushed away, and so far it really seems like DRG is playing the better game.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, these are the little things, right? Quite often these Banshees show up, they get a little cancel on that hatchery, and sure, DongRaeGu will still be able to go up to 5 bases a bit later, but that's kind of how Terrans claw their way back into the game if the early game didn't really work out. DongRaeGu on top of that too, bringing the Queens in position, having the Overseer there to deal with it, and ByuN really needs to start finding some success. Well, DongRaeGu is looking for a pretty big counterattack. Don't forget that he's got Burrow. He could burrow a couple of Banelings in the mineral line the way that Elazer always does it, but this is decent economic damage regardless, and at the same time he's safe at home. Man, ByuN is in a bit of trouble.
He's in a lot of trouble. He loses 14 SCVs and then doesn't find any advantage on DRG's side of the map and just pretty much completely loses momentum. That's often the worst thing about those types of engagements. What the Zergs are really looking to do is trip up the Terran and either stop them from attacking or they mess up their attack. They run on creep and into Banelings. DRG playing a fabulous game, continuing to hold on to so much creep spread as well, getting up to that hive. 2-2 only slightly behind ByuN's, but ByuN, I mean, one thing we did learn from him in his comeback earlier, well, not this year, last year I suppose, was that he actually still has some pretty darn good late game TVZ when other Terrans refuse, basically. They're very shy about going into the late game and embracing it. ByuN has been the Terran to do that. So still got some hope here for ByuN, but he knows that his momentum's been completely stopped.
Yeah, he really has evolved a long time, because for a while you used to always think that, like, yeah, ByuN's great with Marines, Marauders, Widow Mines, but he was sometimes a bit stubborn to go into that ultra late game of Terran with all the Liberators and the Gulls. This time I'm not even sure if he's gonna get there, as the Widow Mine splashes over the Marines and medevac too, so more friendly fire being dealt. The work account is the one thing that's truly disturbing about this game. DongRaeGu's got 91 drones, he's not losing any drones. Meanwhile, ByuN is hovering around 60 SCVs. That's just not a place where you want to be as Terran.
Yeah, it's not good enough. ByuN is going to defend against the aggression so far. It's not really all that DRG has to throw at him, but it shows a lot of confidence when a Zerg player is aggressively moving into the terrain off of creep on a small map with Ling bailing and actually finding some connections there.
Yep, finding very decent connections. Once again, that momentum that you were talking about, if ByuN thought about getting out on the map with that massive army and really start to push back the creep, not really happening, because simply there aren't enough Marines left. Even just Zerglings feeling confident enough to engage this army. I mean, this is a very important phase in the game, because ByuN is trying to go up to 4 bases. DongRaeGu is obviously aware of it. He's trying to keep tracks of it. Widowmine does get a good shot there on the Zerglings. At the same time, we still have some forces of ByuN active on the top right side. And DongRaeGu actually just kind of lets that command center go. I guess it was floating, so maybe he couldn't do much about it, but I wouldn't mind it if DongRaeGu would have... Okay, he had a barreled Zergling underneath it. That explains everything.
Yeah, very cheeky. DRG is still continuing to be so aggressive with this army composition off of creep is still... It's dangerous, but it's been working out. And then behind it, of course, going into that hive, he manages to start 3-3 only like 10 seconds behind the Terran's 3-3. That's not a good sign for the Terran. Well, ByuN still has that good army supply. He's built it up. It is looking harder and harder to actually get a win in this game. Even the SCVs going down again to the Banelings. DRG kind of wiffle waffles between the Marines and the SCVs. Decides to go after the SCVs into the natural, where there are some Widow Mines. Maybe not the best use of that whole Ling-Baneling clump for 11 SCVs, right? But DRG kind of has some wiggle room.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing for DongRaeGu is that all this action is taking place in the natural of ByuN. So even if ByuN cleans it up, it's not like he can just move all of his units to the other side of the map. That's gonna take a little while, and by the time that he would actually be there, obviously the first Ultras are gonna get out. We haven't burrowed Baneling that unburrows. And look at that one Zergling going on a little bit of a killing spree here. 6 more SCVs bite the dust. And it's just a matter of time before we get more Vipers and Ultras. ByuN still hanging in there. The supply is not looking all that bad. Economically, it's looking a little bit worse. I'm mostly just worried about these Ultras and Vipers. Those are going to be very difficult to deal with just Marines and Marauders.
Absolutely. It's a whole nother part of the army, making it a bit more complex. ByuN also might be kind of surprised to see it. The Vipers specifically, that is. Obviously, Ultras are going to be on the docket for any TVZ. But this quadruple drop up to the top north, ByuN finally, I'm sick and tired of you trying to defend with only a limited number of Lings and Banelings. I'm going to really commit to this. Might actually find some room here. He showed this exact type of play against, the really epic series versus Sterile, right? Where he was able to control 2 large bio-based armies before, and he's going to try that again, but also being attacked on his 3rd base. Has to lift the command center in case the Banelings pop that. A very good Widowmine hit, at least to clean it up. And ByuN goes right back to trying to use his offensive reinforcements.
The first Ultras are on the way, but it's going to take a little while before they're actually out. Maybe after DongRaeGu just lost all these Zerglings and Banelings, there is potential for ByuN to do something with that army on the top right side, but plenty of Zerg units left behind at home. DongRaeGu smells blood, wants to keep on pushing. There's no need for him to really get this adventurous. He's still the one with the better economy. I love the random parasitic bomb, just to soften up these medevacs a little bit. You may not kill these medevacs, but this is still annoying. If you're ByuN, you want to micro Marines and Marauders. You don't want to deal with your medevac micro, and it just feels that the swarm is never ending at this point. DongRaeGu is relentless in game 1.
Exactly. I mean, as I said, that Viper probably even a little bit of a surprise, like, oh, I actually got a Viper, So now I have to micro yet another thing on top of making sure that my medevacs unload, my bio is split, and my Marauders are on the front line. So that's a lot to do. That income advantage graph not making this look like a very pretty game for ByuN. It absolutely is not, but DRG having the time of his life, feeling very confident, still has all the creep spread. I feel like I haven't seen a creep swimmer die in the last, 10 minutes even, on very good upgrades, and it kind of feels like the world is his oyster, whereas for ByuN, he's just hoping that he gets 1, then 2, then maybe even 3 great engagements. He's kind of hoping for DRG to mess up.
Normally, these kinds of engagements we see at the edge of creep or somewhat close to some of the important expanse of the Zerg, but all of them are taking place on the side of ByuN when it comes to light shade here, and that's just not very pretty, because whenever you get a good fight, you can't really capitalize on it, you can't really push the issue. I gotta say, these queens are getting a little bit adventurous, some of them may get picked off here, but we know the first ultras are out, kindness plating is done, obviously they already had 3-3 upgrades, and this Zerg army just looks way better. That parasitic bomb is gonna deal a lot of damage to these medevacs. Jeez Louise, that's -3, 4, 5 medevacs immediately as the Widowmine decides to help out too. My goodness, what a great game by ByuN. He still needs to be a bit careful, right? We've seen games like this before where ByuN just hanging there, and then all of a sudden the Zerg player runs out of steam and doesn't have any resources to remax anymore. But so far it looks beautiful what DongRaeGu is displaying.
That's exactly what I was getting at. You know, if DRG keeps thinking that I can take fights willy-nilly because I'm in such control, and then he takes 2, 3 kind of mediocre fights or very bad fights, then suddenly he's without cash, he's without creep spread, and it's on a short map where like the momentum swings really harshly. So he's still got to keep that in mind. You know, you never really truly feel comfortable unless you have like a 5,000 bank, I suppose. But he should still be feeling pretty good. He is going to take this engagement, but it is somewhat off of creep, and that Marauder count is quite intimidating to those ultras.
Yep, I mean the army supply of ByuN is actually quite a bit bigger. He's got 30 more army supply to work with at this point. Finally found a little bit of economic damage in the top right. And the Queen spent a lot of energy trying to keep this hatchery alive. It seems like the hatch will still go down unless these ultras have something to say about it, and they do. I mean, this is kind of it. The fungals do connect with a couple of these bio units. Bailing started to roll in. DongRaeGu needs to be careful. Time is definitely on his side. He just needs to have one more proper cleanup.
Exactly. The fungals looking to do that, but he's out of them for now. Easy parasitic bomb to dodge out of that time as ByuN was retreating anyways. He's actually going to retreat and try and defend this 5th. It makes a lot of sense to take this 5th. He's going to be able to defend and attack from this point. And DRG already lost 1 base up here. If he lost another one, then we would be a little bit scared about his economic situation. Never really accrued that much of a bank for minerals, and would be starting to mine out of his main and natural, right? But that's a little bit farther in the future. ByuN still has a lot of work to do. Still has to take a good engagement against Ultra, Viper, and Fester. There's a lot of possibilities there.
It seems very difficult, but we know if there's a Terran out there that's capable of it, it has to be ByuN. DongRaeGu getting a little adventurous here at the edge of creep, kind of going off creep, and it's obviously very intimidating for him to run too deep into too many Widow Mines, because the Bailings are very important for him at this point. You mentioned the mineral bank. It's pretty much non-existent for DongRaeGu. He's got the better army, but he still needs to take the better fight.
He's waiting for that one good fungal, right? But otherwise, letting the bio army just kite back off of creep is not going to go super well for DRG. As we can see here, ByuN totally on top of getting that concave already preset, so pulling the individual like sections of the Terran army back is easy enough for him to do. Once again, going to happen here. Some Bailings do collide thanks to a couple of fungals, and the Vipers come in. It looks like they're not really going to find a whole lot to do, as just the ground army is not really there anymore for DRG. Does have some ultras on a planetary, which are going to get the kill, but aren't supporting the defense in the top right.
This is turning into a really sick game. The kind of stuff we want to see from these two great StarCraft players in the first round of the lower bracket. Somehow we got there. DongRaeGu finding some very important economic damage, taking out that base at 9 o'clock. But hey, ByuN also getting a couple of good fights in the center. The work account for ByuN is getting lower and lower. At this point, he's actually supply blocked. He's lost so many depots, and obviously losing the planetary adds up too. He still has the bigger army. He's got a 40 army supply advantage, but can he do something with it?
That's always the question, it feels like, towards these late game TDCs. It's like, well, a Terran has 40 more supply, but then they have to get across so much creep spread, they have to kill so many bases, and there's always the chance that the spellcasters come in strong for the Zerg player. That is a decent amount of Widow Mines, but starting to get cleaned up thanks to a couple of Banelings. DRG actually trying to expand to the bottom left is something that ByuN definitely has to stop, so very good of him to have a little drop force to the left.
I'm definitely a big fan of the infestors, especially when you have this much gas in the bank. I think just having the ability to land a couple of fungals and let your banelings connect with, obviously, ideally Marines, but even Marauders, as long as they're clumped up and fungled, the banelings start doing all right against them. It's mostly the Widow Mines, I think, that's what's really preventing DongRaeGu from winning the first game, as he gets another good little fight in the bottom left. ByuN trying to retake the base at 9 o'clock. Overseer is being sent forward, trying to draw the Widow Mine fire, and actually being pretty successful in doing so. Seems like DongRaeGu is breaking through a little bit, but it's hard to keep going off grip.
I think that might have been just a mistake. ByuN was looking to the left, so his army got dragged in AI to the other army. Like, that was not on purpose to do that, but that's ByuN's really having his multitasking tested. I don't think he was paying attention to the force that was picked off at 9 o'clock, and then he wasn't paying attention to this. Now full attention back on here, but that could be temporary. He just put an orbital over on the 9 o'clock, which means that Ling's going by will definitely devastate it, and then again, you know, distract him as well. So it's if ByuN could just have a fully safe base in the bottom left, a brand new base with a planetary with like both the upgrades, and he could focus entirely on his micro. It's difficult to do now, and actually DRG just figures that he can end this. He's going across to ByuN's side of the map, looking to kill not just the base, but perhaps ByuN himself. Parasitic bombs being thrown down, Funko's being thrown down. A very good concave for the Terran, gives the Terran a little bit of hope, and actually it turns around, starting to chase after those investors and those ultras.
What a great hold by ByuN. Obviously doesn't mean all of a sudden he's winning this game, but he's getting some very big pickoffs. Something even blew up a couple of Veilings there. I'm not exactly sure what happened on the right side. Let's not forget that's still an orbital on the left, so it's very vulnerable for those Zerglings you just mentioned. I mean, both players is making some fantastic moves, but DongRaeGu, the one who's been mining so much more than his opponent throughout the entirety of this game, no minerals left in the bank, just lost the majority of his expensive units, and his most important base, well, it's right next to the most important base of ByuN, but ByuN's army is right here. I don't know how he does it, but this Terran just never dies.
I mean, I really want to give a lot of kudos to ByuN, absolutely, about responding as quick as he did, like he did, but DRG also was probably just getting too eager, you know? He kept thinking, you know, like, oh, I'm doing a good job, oh, okay, I'm pretty safe on the bases, but when you really look at how much economy he has going for him, how much bank he had for him, it wasn't that impressive, and all of a sudden losing a base is now really important for DRG. He's going to look for some revenge, though, and gets the planetary to the top right. That was the base that ByuN was supposed to not have to worry about for some time, and now it's gone. At least he takes down a couple of units on it, and ByuN still has, guys, a 70 army supply lead at this point. How did that happen? It has, and that means that the overall supply is incredibly deceiving.
I actually wonder if ByuN knows how close this game is, or that he's even winning it at this point, because it's gotta feel desperate when you're losing all your SCVs, when you're losing a base, you only have 25 SCVs left, and you see Zerg units, but these are pretty much the only Zerg units that are out there. GG gets called, and ByuN, despite the fact that not many things went his way in the first 10-12 minutes of this game, who needs Ghost and Liberate a zombie grub? Apparently not this man.
You just need persistence, man. Eventually your bio is going to work out against the more expensive units of your opponent, especially on one of the smaller maps where, you know, 4 or 5 bases seems like a pretty feasible thing for DRG. He definitely got him and he felt safe with them. Then the 6th and the 7th actually started to feel increasingly more important, and he couldn't quite save them while also taking good enough trades. We kind of hinted at this possibility, right? We said that this was a possible solution, and it happened. ByuN actually takes game number 1. It sounds like we're going to go to a break, guys. When we come back, it is game 2 of ByuN versus DRG. Welcome back, everyone, to IEM Katowice. We are in the middle of ByuN versus DRG, and thankfully it is delivering. Unfortunately, not delivering in DRG's favor. It seemed like he had that game on lockdown, and ByuN just stuck with it. Perseverance, bio-efficiency, ends up taking game 1 of the series.
What do you think was the real turning point in game 1 on Lights here? Do you think it was the moment where ByuN floated over his main, the orbital, to land at 9 o'clock, and DongRaeGu is like, this is my moment to punish him, capitalize on it? Because that fight didn't really work out, did it?
Yeah, I think that was the ultimate turning point, the one where it became very obvious that DRG was not able to afford those things. But I think just overall, when we look at it, it really is a cautionary tale for Zerg players out there. You know, the tale of you might feel like you're in control, and you are for the most part, but if you don't have that steady income, you don't have a bank to make up for overly aggressive maneuvers, then it can turn very quickly. And that's certainly what happened. So DRG maybe can think back on that game, improve on it, and if he gets such a lead again, I think he absolutely wins. But ByuN's probably not going to let him have it as we go into game 2. It's on Pillars of Gold. One of these guys is going to be eliminated based off of this best of 3. Who's it going to be? In the bottom left, as the blue Terran up 1, he is ByuN.
And in the top right side of Pillars of Gold, we're looking at the main base of the Korean Zerg, who fought all year long to make it to this tournament, got upset by Haz in the upper bracket, and somehow had to play ByuN in lower bracket round 1. He needs to turn things around to keep his Katowice dreams alive. It is DongRaeGu.
I was still impressed with DRG, honestly. I actually was afraid that last game was going to be ByuN showing off his micro in the early game, getting a solid start, and then just turning that into a lead, and eventually an execution with some type of mid-game push. But DRG was the one that actually looked stronger, like he was all over everything ByuN wanted to do for about, 14 minutes of that game, it felt like? Yep. So that's very promising for DRG fans out there.
Yeah, even the little things like the Queens being in position with the Overseer to deny the Banshees from potentially cancelling the 5th base. Like, when even those things start working out, I started to get really hopeful for him. I was like, damn, DongRaeGu is playing a mighty fine game. He was winning the majority of the fights, or at least getting even trades, which is okay if you're economically ahead. I think he did a great job at chipping away at the economy of ByuN. And there is always that little issue where at one point the Terran army is just a bit bigger than the Zerg army, and that's where you need just 1 or 2 great fights. Not okay fights, no, you need fantastic fights, like absolute victories, because then obviously Terran doesn't have the resources anymore to replace those armies. But right when he got to that breaking point, he couldn't really find those fights that he was looking for anymore.
It's kind of a hard thing to keep track of sometimes as the players, as the casters, as your opponents, where it just, there wasn't really an explosive, oh my goodness, why would you ever do that? There wasn't 40 Banelings running into 5 Widow Mines that'll activate a type of thing, right? It was over time you just started to realize, well, he's got spellcasters, that's great, but what's supporting those spellcasters? Okay, he had 7 ultras at one point, now we're down to 2. Hold on here. Because there was so much action around the place, it was just that ByuN was steadily taking better engagements, but not to a degree that we're well, clearly DRG threw this game at its exact point. But if you had to say that he did, it probably was when he tried to run into the orbital and kill ByuN. He had just gotten very confident off of being so aggressive in the earlier portions of the game.
As ByuN just had a few more bio units than he expected, and at one point you run up the ramp, you're like, all right, we can take this, and then you're running into a massive concave, and all of your Zerglings and Banelings are disappearing, and you're like, oh, now it's just 1 or 2 Ultras left, and Ultras are great, but not by themselves. I mean, we often say momentum is a real thing in StarCraft 2, as this Reaper got close to dying, didn't get the Creep Tumor, but the Reaper did get 1 drone kill, and at this level, that's something that I'm sure that it makes ByuN smile a little bit, where he's like, all right, continuing where I left off in game 1, just playing well. Let's just keep going and let's try to close this out.
Yeah. Well, we got ByuN going for a 3cc build here, and we'll see if he adds anything aggressive off of that. He has certainly been showing some experimentation for the Terran builds versus Zerg, really utilizing the idea that Terrans have a 1-1-1 setup and can swap the add-ons wherever they want, but actually just kind of reining it in here and doing some pretty normal stuff. Last game, yes, it was a Banshee Hellbed attack, but that's that's expected. I'm talking ByuN has showed us some fake 2-1-1s like 7 Marine opener Marine drops with a battlecruiser follow-up type thing, you know? But not that crazy. Just actually this game in particular being a very solid macro-oriented TVZ.
Are you a little bit surprised that DongRaeGu decided to go for this expand here on Pillars of Gold? Like, I know a lot of people are starting to be fan of the triangle expands, is trying to get that creep out there a little bit quicker, but I feel on Pillars we still see them very often just taking the base at 12 o'clock.
I am a little surprised by it, yeah. You're right, it's more usual, I suppose, for the other one. Sometimes it feels like... It always matters, of course, but sometimes it feels like, well, if they get the creep out to a certain extent, it doesn't matter that it was a third or rather than a fourth. And that is sometimes the goal, right? Like on Romana's side, they take a forward third to get the creep as far as possible forward. And maybe that's what DRG is thinking here. He's going to have to hopefully get a lot of creep forward on where is probably the most commonly attacked place on Pillars of Gold. If ByuN was doing 8 racks, for instance, which we see a lot here, he'd probably hit that third, which we would usually expect as a fourth. So probably a similar idea there. And then, wow, continuing to expand in that direction too. It does kind of get closer to ByuN if ByuN expanded to the right side as well. Even without expanding to the right, as ByuN takes the normal triangle expansion, it still is kind of... It is shorter of a distance than if it was the other third.
It is also very important for DongRaeGu that he at least has some vision on the left side, right? Because I don't think you ever want to play a ZVT against ByuN where you can basically get units towards the top side of the map without you really being aware of it. So I don't know if we can get creep out there or maybe put an Overlord in a good spot here and there. If we see Burrow again, I wouldn't even mind the occasional random burrowed Zergling, just as kind of a spotter Zergling, because I'm a little bit afraid that he just doesn't have enough vision on the left side.
It could be possible. It's not usually where Terrans are focusing their attack past a certain point. Like if they see the expansion over there, they can direct their tank push or what have you off to the left side. But yeah, I'm with you. Still need that map vision. And we do have ByuN's first attack ready to go. Like I was saying, it was a very macro-oriented, directly pretty much up into the bio and drop. So it's pretty speedy, but DRG already making some lings, has a couple of creep tumors. Should be prepared for this, but this is where we usually see ByuN start to gain some advantages with that micro. Just kidding, instantly having to pick up.
Left one Marine behind that to actually snipe a Baneling, so at least that was a decent trade. It's very important, of course, for DongRaeGu not to take a bad fight here against these Marines, not try to engage and then disengage, and you lose a whole bunch of units on the tail end. ByuN picked up his units and could potentially decide to drop the main base. The Zerglings and Banelings are a little bit out of position. I don't think we can get a whole lot done here, but even if you just get a Queen and maybe a couple of Zerglings, this is already good enough.
I mean, I think DRG would probably hope that this doesn't happen too often, since most of his forces and his queens would be focused over to the right, because that's where he's expanding. And actually...
Oh, matter of fact, super low on HP. First one goes down, the second one is so close to dying. Queens! Oh my goodness, one more hit. 4 HP. Are you kidding?
Dang. But okay, that kind of was my point, was that the queens will hopefully be there, because just like last game, DRG is not going into that lair technology, no Hydras, no Spire, just all about the Ling, Baneling, and then getting some pretty decently timed upgrades. So that is supposed to be a weakness. You know, if they can drop, if they can beep-bop between the fourth and the main, that could be problematic. Hopefully if your queens are on the fourth, then they cannot get to the main, but that's the ideal version of events anyways. You see a Widow Mine drop just right in the fourth base instead. Quick pull away from DRG though. So far pretty good.
No Spore Crawlers here yet, or an Overseer, so this kind of stuff does get a little bit annoying. Good Widow Mine shot from the high ground. Not too many drones, but a lot of Zerglings going down. As DongRaeGu, you want to take care of this as quickly as possible. Finds a little opening in this mineral line. Gets his hands on a couple of mules. That's sweet. He's going to lose all the Zerglings in the process though.
Maybe it wasn't that good of a trade. It had a, you know, fairly, it was possible it was successful anyways, because there was so much else happening on the map, like the Widow Mine drops, like this drop in the middle, which ByuN is going to try and pick up. That's the very weak side attack, which I guess is supposed to be safe out there, but maybe repair later. DRG once again getting aggressive on ByuN's side of the map. It almost feels like it's surprise tactics, but I don't know if it's really working on ByuN. Well, the Widow Mine's not really helping out towards the end there. Ling starting to get surrounds on the units, and hold on here, did DRG actually just find an opportunity? The SCV is completely unguarded against the Banelings rolling in. They're pretty much guaranteed to die unless they're picked up. Good last second thinking right there from ByuN, but this did a whole lot more damage I think either one of us were expecting.
Yes, but he's also doing it with a worse economy than I think either of us expecting, right? Like, that's a lot of Zerg units to be very aggressive, off creep on the other side of the map of a 73 drone economy. It's obviously working out pretty nicely with a couple of SCVs going down, all the depots. I think a sensor tower even got picked off in the process, so definitely a successful attack, and DongRaeGu now finding the window to get a few more drones out, because I get a little scared when I see Zerg players be hyper-aggressive of like 75, 77 drones. I'm like, this better works out, and there was actually a big chance that that could have backfired, because there were so many mines, but DongRaeGu did a fantastic job in avoiding the massive mine hits, and actually turned that into a very good attack.
Absolutely. I was also thinking that at least one of those, if one of those Widow Mines gets like a better shot on the group of Lings, then it's really not as potent. But we're once again at that situation. The Widow Mine's looking for some good shots. Not really going to find one. Not really, but ByuN's still able to kite backwards away from the Ling Baneling. His SCVs, unfortunately, not able to do so, are going to die once again. But ByuN, I mean, I think he's going to take care of the army eventually. He doesn't have any presence on the other side of the map. It's constantly him defending.
That's also big, losing the factory with the tech lab that was researching drilling claws, so these Widow Mines will not get their upgrade for quite some time. I believe that's the second time the upgrade got cancelled. And yeah, ByuN stabilizes, but took a lot of damage and is once again set back quite far. He's got his SC2 upgrades at this point, but his economy kind of in shambles. He's been hovering around 60 for quite some time at this point, and DongRaeGu this time expanding like a madman, even trying to take the top left. And even if this gets cancelled, like, who cares? You still have 5 other bases. This is way better than actually losing drones in one of those 5 bases.
Well, I really like ByuN's instincts. Ooh, what am I? Oh, can't get anything. Instinct. You know, after he was done cleaning that defense up, he was like, okay, I gotta get on the other side of the map because this guy throwing bodies at me is probably also expanding and spreading that creep. So it was a good idea. It's not actually going to work out in execution, but at least getting on the other side of the map. And also attacking to the right. Needs to clear up something here. ByuN's still on 4 bases. He still has a planetary done that he can kind of depend on to fall back to. But DRG taking some great trades here and just really running away with the game again.
Yep. Definitely looking very good here in the early mid-game to just later mid-game stages already, as HiveTech is on the way, doing a good job in avoiding massive Widow Mine shots. They're always going to get a couple of kills here and there, but we don't see the 15 Banelings going down to a single shot. And ByuN needs a little more than he's been getting over the last few minutes, and he knows it. He's going to try to make some magic happen with this drop. He's been so annoying with this. Like, we're just kind of following it, right? But if you're DongRaeGu, this is an absolute nightmare to deal with. You know it's out there, you just don't know where, and he keeps on picking it up and unloading, sneaks back in, finds himself a couple of drones. Could have been a lot worse, but I still like the effort from ByuN here.
I do as well. I mean, he doesn't really have the army quite yet to feel confident moving on to creep. It's certainly even not on the army supply, but then it also depends on how those Widow Mines are burrowed and how they hit, as DRG is once again surprisingly aggressive for a Zerg player going after that planetary. SCV's trying to repair. Command Center has to be cancelled. The Banelings are looking for the SCVs. They're looking for the planetary. They're going to find it, but it was at a cost, a big cost.
Definitely a big cost, but also getting the cancel on the additional command center is great, because now it's not just like, okay, you blow up a planetary, but the new command center is ready to land and morph into a planetary. It's gonna take quite some time for ByuN actually has 4 bases up and running again, and he's making a lot of Widow Mines. I hope he realizes that he doesn't have drilling claws. I mean, I can only assume that he does, but it's kind of hard to see unless you're actually burning them in a fight like this, where you're like, oh, that takes a little bit longer than I expected. I mean, I don't think that ByuN really has enough units here to get a whole lot done on creep.
Yeah, and he unburrowed them, actually. And I was like, well, it's going to take a while to replant. They're burrowed, but they're no longer there as DRG takes them all out. He's going to force ByuN to lift off, which he's still capable of doing. DRG actually finally adding on some Hydralisk, and they have +1, is a bit surprising to see. Most of ByuN's army seems like it is in medevacs. A couple of Widow Mines desperate to hold, still don't have those drilling claws. 3-3 not quite done, as ByuN is once again on the ropes over on his own side of the map.
1 or 2 decent Widow Mine connections there, but we're still going to lose 17 SCVs, and that's gonna be it. GG gets called. DongRaeGu ties it up here in lower bracket round 1, which means that now ByuN is 1 map away from being eliminated in the very first round of the IEM Katowice. Obviously, a lot of things can happen in Game 3. I have to admit, I was a little bit worried and I wasn't sure if I was really feeling that initial Ling Bane attack of the 70-ish drones that DongRaeGu was going for. But he did such a good job in avoiding the Widow Mines that it actually turned into a very successful attack.
Yeah, exactly. It did all start with that attack. DRG just playing a particular style of Zerg that you're not really used to, as far as only focusing on Ling Bane. Like, no, Zergs do that, but how many Zergs are going to be so eager to take not just one or two, but like all of their fights off of creep aggressively? Not many of them, but DRG, he's an exciting player, as is ByuN. One of these guys will go home. Who would it be? We're going to find out after this break. The last map of the lower bracket series. Whoever loses this has to go home, or I suppose in this case, has to go to bed. But the point is, they're going to be super disappointed if they lose. Both of these guys, rising stars again in StarCraft 2 after some very historic careers. Both want to prove themselves again, and both had a decent shot. This still felt like it was a good, momentous period for ByuN and for DRG. But one of them has to say goodbye preemptively. not something that anyone wants to do. DRG showing some very aggressive Zerg, finally finds effectiveness in game 2. ByuN showing the tenacity of Terran in game number 1. Who is going to win game number 3?
I have really no idea. At the beginning of the series, I was very confident that ByuN was just going to bring it home, but that first game was like, whoa, he's really going to have to work for it. In the end, he did pull through. In the second game, DongRaeGu just looked better than he even did in game 1, because this time he was able to close it out. I don't know, but I do know I'm excited for it. In the bottom right side of Death Aura, we're looking at the main base of the man that some see as a favorite to win it all, but his tournament life is on the line in lower bracket round 1, the Korean Terran player, ByuN.
In the top left, at one point a god of StarCraft, winning a GSL way back in the day, having come back from the military just like ByuN, and looking to prove himself again as a champion of StarCraft, but his life is also on the line. He is the Red Zerg, DRG.
You know, Zombie Grub, I really thought it would take at least day 2 before we would bring out the speech where, oh, it would suck to lose one of these guys already. It feels unfair to say goodbye to one of them this early. Didn't think I was having those feelings in day 1. Like, obviously, all of these players that have made it to this tournament, they had to fight for it, and they're all great in their own way. But we had a couple of clear favorites. But to lose DongRaeGu or ByuN on the very first day, I gotta say that makes me a little bit sad. But yeah, I guess it just is what it is. We can always blame Has, blame Voidrace and Has for making all of this happen.
I'm pretty sure DRG lost to Haas and was like, even after the 2 losses or the 1 loss versus ByuN, was like, if only I didn't lose to Haas.
Yeah.
Darn it.
No, 100%. If you see that ByuN loses in the first round of the upper bracket, you have to play him in lower bracket. Losing against Has is always going to suck, even though I do think that Has and Nice are definitely a bit underrated in this day and age. That's just pretty good. And maybe Protoss is pretty good, guys. Maybe a bit of both, who knows. But yeah, when you then see that ByuN is your opponent, you're like, damn it. I really shouldn't have lost to Has, should I?
Exactly, that's exactly the sentiment. ByuN bringing out an old favorite of his. He was the best player with 2-1-1 that he invented, I guess, is all in question. Get the StarCraft historians on that one. But he definitely made it popular. He made it his own, and he continued doing it after it stopped being the meta. He was still doing it before he went into military, and then he came back from military and he did it again. And you know, you kind of look at him and like you're like, ByuN, that's not what you're supposed to do anymore. Stop it. If you're gonna go for a 2-1-1, at least go for a 3CC 2-1-1. And he looked at us and went, no, I'm ByuN, and the 2-1-1 is still really good when I'm in control of it. And we do see it here. So it's kind of an easy thing to scout. There are some ways that you can change the build up and kind of throw your opponent off. Or as I said, the 3CC version at least is economical. But if ByuN is just going to go for 2-1-1 into, you know, 3rd CC, all that good stuff, then it's about controlling the map, getting the aggression started a bit sooner than any previous game.
Did ByuN scout at all this game? Did he even SCV scout? No, right?
I don't think so.
I don't think he saw anything on the other side of the map. I'm sure that the lovely Mapu is doing a great job observing these games for us. We'll confirm it. ByuN hasn't seen anything pretty much outside of his natural. I gotta say, that's a little bit crazy. I mean, maybe he just doesn't think that DongRaeGu is wild enough to do something super odd and out of the ordinary in game 3, but to just not scout with your tournament life on the line, lower bracket round 1, I don't know if I would have the courage for that, Zombie Grub.
Maybe just ByuN things, or Marine King Prime things, you know, either one. But it's risky. It's okay. DRG's not doing anything. DRG is actually going even for like a later speed here. He's not even getting a scout quite at himself. He's got Lings all around patrolling, and that's fantastic. So far not seeing any Hellions is already probably a little suspicious to DRG. Then he sees 3 Marines. But that Overlord in the back, it's going to be able to tell DRG, okay, it is a 2-1-1, because ByuN has a lot of other tricky builds. Those 3 Marines could actually meet a battlecruiser, believe it or not. The Overlord's not going. Okay, all right, never mind then. The Overlord would get a very easy scout if it just moved. There we go.
Yeah. I wonder what he's going to do with the 3 spore crawlers that he's building at this point. Like, it's always nice to have spore crawlers, right? To also just keep the medevacs at bay and buy yourself some extra time, or maybe later down the line against those Widow Mines that ByuN is obviously a big fan of too. Just going to let all of them finish. I think it's safe to say you technically don't need them at this point, but DongRaeGu seems to think that it doesn't have too much of an impact on his economy.
Yeah. I do wonder if it... Yeah, because he got the scout. He could have canceled them, absolutely. Yeah, well... They'll be able to reposition them in more anti-Liberator, anti-Medevac areas. But for now, it's all about the attack, hitting at that 5-minute mark. A little bit sooner, actually, as he just walked the Marines across the field. So that's a little bit of a surprise for DRG. But with this, you want to get, you know, at 5 minutes, you want to have like 20, 30 Lings, enough Queens, and then you want to have them covering each other as well, most importantly. I don't know if ByuN's going to try and snipe one of these Queens. He usually tries, at the very least. Actually going into the natural. Okay, a little bit bold there. He's going to back away.
I mean, he's gonna push the creep back, found himself an Overlord. It's a little something. It's safe to say that ByuN is hoping for more, and maybe with the extra medevac of Marines showing up, as I believe there is one Widowmine in the mix and 6 more Marines that are about to arrive. It's going to be a little bit better. We have one more scan going down, so there really isn't a lot of creep for DongRaeGu to work with anymore. But I still think that if you're ByuN, you want to get a proper trade here, right? You want to at least get a good fight against the Zerglings, reduce those numbers a little bit, and ideally you want to grab a Queen or 2 if that's possible. So far he's not finding anything yet, but there is a lot of firepower in this army. Here we go, very important moment for ByuN.
Yeah, the second engagement with 2-on-1 is usually when you want to have those Banelings, make yourself extra safe, especially against ByuN.
Whoa!
Control is out of this world, up against the wall. He's actually going to target fire the Banelings. A little bit of a misclick on that one weak one means that he has to pick up to play it safe. That is the type of thing that ByuN does and he actually wins from. You're not supposed to win with 2-1-1, I'll be honest, but it sometimes happened with ByuN. Even finding 2 Queens, as DRG was a little flustered from that.
Yep, DongRaeGu maybe focusing on a couple of additional Zerglings to morph those into Banelings whatsoever. Losing those 2 extra Queens definitely hurts. That means that ByuN is going to get a very easy cancel on this 4th hatchery. Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty good for ByuN. Some of these traits were nice. I do agree with you on the misclick. It felt like there was even more potential, right? As more Queens getting picked up. Jeez Louise, that's like 5 Queens, I believe, already in this game that have gone down. Maybe even 6 at this point. I'm sure Mapu will give us the exact number. Yeah, 6 it is. I mean, that's actually starting to add up real quick, and that's a bit sloppy on DongRaeGu. Especially the last 4, right? It really felt the last 4 didn't have to die at all.
No, absolutely. They are not supposed to die. DRG is actually really messing up the defense right now. One of the problems with the typical 2-on-1 is that it was so planned out. You know, you knew they'd hit at 5 minutes, they'd follow up with more, and then you'd have Banelings in time, your Queens would all be alive, spreading the creep, and then you'd suddenly have 4 bases, 80 drones, tons of creep spread against a guy who's still trying to make those Marines work. But now you've lost all your Queens, so creep's not as much of an option. Your anti-air has also been reduced, and it was already not good to begin with. Another Queen gets picked off by the Widowmine, and ByuN, I mean, a brilliant build choice, I think, against what DRG was doing. He doesn't want to really add on a Spire or Hydralisk, at least not quickly, but then finding so much extra success with it. Ugh.
Look at the supply block that DongRaeGu is about to hit. He's got 1,200 minerals in the bank. He simply can't spend it. Probably doesn't have enough larva. ByuN is actually going to take a moment for himself. Well, I think this would have been a perfect moment to just go pedal to the metal and keep going. Because like you said, DongRaeGu didn't have a lot of anti-air to begin with. And after losing 5 Queens, there really was not much that DongRaeGu could do about medevacs bouncing between bases.
Yeah, that's... I want to say it's inexcusable, but maybe a bit too harsh. It's really not what DRG knows he can show against the 2-1-1, honestly. ByuN has once again gotten a little bit into the late into the combat shields. Seems to be a repeated mistake from him, but might not matter. A couple Banelings going down, a good focus fire, still abusing the medevacs and flying every which way, clearing up Q-tumors every which way. DRG just trying to still collect his breath. Does now have 5 hatcheries. 6, no 7. Is that 2 macro hatcheries in the main? He finally spent his money. Rotterdam, so he's got a lot of hatcheries.
Like, if I don't have Queens to inject, I may as well just build all the hatcheries. It's funny that you mentioned the combat shield, because when he came in with the second wave of Marines, I was like, combat shield is not being researched. I was like, does he already have it? And I was like, no, it doesn't look like they have combat shield. Then I kind of lost track of it, so that's definitely a little bit later than it should be. Other than that, ByuN has still been getting some fantastic trades across the board. DongRaeGu is starting to stabilize, though. I really think that ByuN gave him a little more time than he perhaps deserved, especially after losing all these Queens. It felt like the doors were wide open for ByuN just to do ByuN things, right? Drop left, right, and center, go from the main to the natural towards the third, back and forth. Instead, he gave him some time to get enough units out. The Baning connections, not actually what you're looking for. The focus fire of ByuN is fantastic. The Widowmine connection was good too. And that's not the fight that DongRaeGu needed.
He might think that ByuN's like desperately retreating, but he's just calmly retreating. He knows reinforcements this time around, so he's totally fine. I think you're right. There just wasn't really that 1-2 punch quite there for ByuN, so good focus fire. So DRG was able to stabilize a bit, and that might just be one of the problems of 2-on-1 can have a good 1-2 punch, but we're on the largest map in the map pool, so that might be a little bit contributing to DRG's so far successful defense. He's living, he's hanging on there. He's not thriving though, like the last game.
Yeah. I don't think we have an infestation pit yet, so it's going to take a little while to get Hive this time. As these medevacs take a lot of damage. Good job by DongRaeGu. Gets the final kill or final hit on the second medevac too. I mean, all of a sudden, our Zergy at 90 drones is starting to find a little more success for himself. ByuN is going to add 3 more barracks at this point, so he's really going to fully send it. I mean, Lings and Banes are good. Eventually, if ByuN can get those 3-3 upgrades, I mean, DongRaeGu is going to have to match those. Otherwise, pure Ling Bane is no longer going to cut it.
That's definitely true. He's got to advance his technology or have a really very powerful position, try to be aggressive like he was in the past, but well, not against a Wood-O-Mine field. And this time, ByuN, of course, having the all the upgrades he would want. He actually doesn't have Drilling Claws. There he goes. He notices it and gets Drilling Claws now, but at least he's getting it. Wood-O-Mine's getting some okay connections, but the bio will have to be microed back. Again, DRG just so aggressive off of that creep. That's not all of ByuN's army, however, and the 4th base should be saved. The 3rd base also going to be under attack. Can ByuN actually multitask well enough? That is the question. Wood-O-Mine's burrow start clearing up the left side. How about the right side? It looks like they might cloud in with some SCVs. A lot of SCVs. All the SCVs are killed.
Oh my goodness, that's a proper bloodbath right there. And DongRaeGu still has some money in the bank during all of this, so he can start remaking those Lings and Banes ASAP. He's absolutely going to need to, because ByuN's army is twice as big as DongRaeGu's army at this point. And that obviously means that ByuN is smelling blood in the water. A couple of Banelings will probably finish up here. There is still a lot of Marines. Can the Banelings connect? Well, they can connect a little bit and they can buy time. I love how ByuN unloaded the single Marauder. It's like, can you please use all your Banelings on this? And DongRaeGu said no, just Zerglings. It's like, oh, okay.
Little fancy footwork there, but DRG also responding with his own good micro. So 4 base is still for ByuN, right? He did get reduced down to, I believe, like 45 SCVs, but is starting to recover. Quadruple SCV production, still 3 mules. It's not bad. And he still has that armor supply lead, and more typical to this matchup, he also has significantly faster 3-3. That's about 30% away from finishing, and DRG has only just finished his infestation pit.
It does kind of feel like it's almost now or never for ByuN though. Like, obviously the doors are still wide open on the right side. He lost all of his depots, he lost his wall. So he really needs to find a proper victory at this point with that army on the left side. Widow-Mine getting a great shot from downtown, but like I said, the floodgates are wide open and his orbital is even very low. I hope that ByuN is paying attention, otherwise he could potentially lose it against Lings and Banes. This army needs to find success for ByuN, or his entire run is going to end right here.
It's going to be a close one. That was kind of an awkward fight on both sides, but I guess favoring the guy who doesn't need creep to be effective. So ByuN taking okay trades in the middle, but then still having to be distracted, having his entire army kind of spread around is giving DRG time to replace those Banelings, maybe even add on a couple of Hydras to support. Now ByuN has consolidated his army, he's trying to push through, but DRG's already on top of him, going to push this force back. ByuN is still reinforcing. And DRG, man, he just doesn't quit, man. He just keeps on going. He's like, no, I want to kill this army. I think I can kill this army. He's going to go for it, despite ByuN having a split, having a concave, being off of creep. And this has been DRG's mistake in the past, right? Overextending.
Yeah, maybe a little over-ambitious there, DongRaeGu, because you're not that rich, you're nowhere near maxed out. He's playing a beautiful game. I can't believe how good this game has been from DongRaeGu, despite the fact that he lost 5 or 6 queens in the beginning of it. Still hanging in there, but needs to be careful that it doesn't get too carried away. This is looking like a pretty successful little run by, and it's obviously keeping ByuN at bay, and that's the most important thing, because if we take a look at the production tab, Hive Tech is finishing up, and that's where DongRaeGu can get some more powerful units out that can also start matching the upgrades of ByuN.
It is certainly a pacing, though, to TVZ that we're more familiar with, right? Like, DRG is not just, like, super far ahead on the Hive timing like we would expect. In the last game, you know, with equal upgrade timings, no, he's actually still struggling to get to that 3-3. So ByuN's army is still more powerful. ByuN has also replaced enough SCVs to be okay, and actually is affording a 5th command center, so he will continue expanding and is once again continuing to push. So we're actually kind of back to a really solid state for both players.
I get a little bit scared when I see DongRaeGu this deep off creep because he keeps taking fights where I'm like, I'm not sure if he should really take this one. He's running down this ramp, doing a good job in avoiding big Widow Mine connections, but no Overseer nearby. Okay, there it is. And he's going to clean up a couple of these Widow Mines on the top right side. It doesn't seem like DongRaeGu is getting the best fight as of yet. These Hydras are so slow, I hate it. The upgrade is halfway done, but it's still going to take a little while before these Hydras become more mobile.
Yeah. I mean, good Widowmine shot there. Even if they do have that speed, they're certainly vulnerable to, once the Lings are gone, right? The Hydras can be chased down, especially with that Marauder slow already being done. This base is pretty ambitious to begin with. It is going to be canceled as ByuN is really hammering this left side as he expands to the left side as well. So we're going to have a tug of war right here on Death Aura's 5th and 6th bases. And ByuN is committing to it. He's trying to clear up creep, maybe even, hopefully it's going to be his eventual 7th base. The engagement's going to unfold, however, only a couple of Widow Mines available, getting at least one good shot, another one on top of the Overseers, the other one on top of the Overseers, and on top of the army that time. So ByuN is going to be pushed back.
Yep, Trader Mines. I love these Marines very low on HP, man. These guys really giving it their all here in the lower bracket, round 1. DongRaeGu is starting to add his first Viper. He's obviously going to need to buy quite some time before his upgrades are going to finish up. But he's been doing a pretty damn good job over the last 2 minutes or so. This is not really a fight that I feel like he should take. Just simply didn't have the numbers. Too many of his units were still out of position. The reinforcements have arrived though, so DongRaeGu will be able to deflect just another attack of ByuN. How are we doing at the bottom?
ByuN also starting to lose some medevacs with units because the Hydras are finally here, fully upgraded. But yeah, the left side going once again, ByuN's momentum, at least initially, as he clears up more creep spread, is able to burrow down the Widow Mines and try and go on top of these Banelings. He's going to have to pick up again, however. I mean, he's not really... It seems like at points he could definitely win one of these battles, but actually every time he's the one that has to retreat.
Yeah, he's also playing it a little bit safe. Zergling's running into the Widow Mines, once again dealing a little bit of friendly fire. Also a successful little harass here, or a little attack by DongRaeGu, as he finds a couple of these SCVs. The main armies are awfully close to each other as well. I think DongRaeGu has quite a bit of supply still at the top, wondering if ByuN is going to strike his base at the top right side again. But it seems like all of ByuN's focus at this point is indeed in the bottom left. And DongRaeGu realizes that he's going to bring over a couple of additional Hydras.
Exactly. Realizing that was an awfully big army. I guess he's not trying to multi-prong me anymore, so he's right about that. All the focus on the left side, as that is also where ByuN is wanting to expand. Finally getting this planetary up, but then even the Rich Vespian Geyser should be something they both have their eyes on. Could be actually what, whoever gets that could be winning the game, right? A couple of Widow Mines trying to safeguard this 3rd base, but it's never really been safe since the supply depots died. The SCVs will go down, but more of a distraction than very much else. Even a Widow Mine on that one means that ByuN is not distracted for too long. Back on the front lines, scanning ahead, seeing what's available. It is still Ling, Baneling, Hydra. No Lurkers, no Ultras, actually not even any Spellcasters so far. So ByuN should be feeling still like he certainly has a shot. And actually ByuN is adding on some technology. You got a fusion core.
Yep, feeling that he can actually maybe not break DongRaeGu right now, but that he feels safe for quite some time. We do see a little pause here from ByuN. Obviously, we have no idea what's happening. He's like, I was just really thirsty. I need a sip of water. DongRaeGu is like, all right, fine. I'll take one too. I know a lot of people, sorry, Zomgra, but a lot of people obviously always concerned about the state of ByuN's hands and his wrist. Like, is he suffering when he's playing? We interviewed him during Aces ROG, and he said in general, whenever he plays from home, he actually feels really comfortable, and nothing really seems to bother him. It's something about the GSL studio and the desk and maybe the way that he's sitting there, the angle, that is kind of hurts his wrist. But he said from home, it doesn't really bother him too much.
That makes a lot of sense. I used to have wrist issues when I was like 21, 22. And, I had my perfect setup at home. But if I ever went anywhere and I was actually going to like LAN centers occasionally, like the slightest difference of like, your elbow positioning could actually really hurt. So, but yeah, it's exactly the point I was going to bring up. If y'all worried about his wrists, it could still be. I mean, eventually if you have wrist problems, they're going to start getting burned out. They're going to hurt. But it might be something else. He says that online when he's at home is actually pretty darn okay.
Man, what a moment to pause as well. 25 minutes into game 3 here of this pretty epic best of 3. Yeah, a very fun one. I feel like over the entire day we had a couple of very good series. I mean, Laser Bunny really stood out. It seems like we're going to need a couple of additional minutes to figure out what is bothering ByuN, guys. So stay with us, very quick break, and after that we'll be back with the conclusion of this series.
All right, guys, we're back at it. We are back into DRG versus ByuN Game 3. Thank you for sticking with us during that pause. And ByuN is now good to go, so we're back into it. You guys remember, we have a very close Game 3 of the lower bracket, man, and it's still going on strong for both sides. We have Fusion Core for ByuN continuing to push in, actually, on this base. Is once again going to be pushed back by the looks of it. Pulling back into his Widow Mines, though. DRG not wanting to take that engagement. And DRG not really able to make a more complex army so far. It's still Ling, Baneling, Hydra, and just a single Viper.
And no money in the bank, that's the biggest problem. Like, having Hydra Link Bane is not that bad if you can remax over and over again and get a couple of good trades, but the trades lately haven't been all that great. Parasitic Bomb is gonna soften up the medevacs a little bit, but DongRaeGu is gonna need to find a good fight. It's a shame he doesn't have Burrow this game. That seems like an upgrade that could come in very handy. I don't really see how he's gonna get a great fight, because ByuN is playing this out very carefully and very methodical.
Yeah, DRG, he's been doing some pretty good run buys, right? But those have actually even stopped. So he figures they're not really worth it. He needs everything he can get back on the defensive line, and he might be right about that. Another engagement is taken here. Widow Mine starting to hit those Lings, looking for the Banelings more specifically. Finally find a couple, but it is going to push ByuN back. But ByuN, one of the reasons that was pushed back was that the top right was completely undefended. ByuN had so much army to the top right, takes out that base, and could probably even give this engagement a really good shot. Yep, off creep, splitting, concaving, all that good stuff. And DRG has to actually run away from his bases. That's bad news for him, but he does find a 5th base, it looks like, or a 6th base. At least that's something.
Yeah, needs a little bit more though, but I don't know if we can get more. Obviously, the reinforcements are on the way. Banelings are crashing into the SCVs. That's nice. Can we get this planetary? It's going to be awfully close. It's being repaired. Hello? Yes? No? Yes, in the end, we do get a planetary, but at the cost of pretty much the entire Zerg army. And DongRaeGu didn't just lose the top right side. He also lost the base at 12 o'clock. These trades are simply not good enough. Our Zerg is really running out of steam. Man, DongRaeGu has played one hell of a series, but I don't think it's going to be good enough, Zombie Grub.
Yeah, I just never really got to catch up in the pacing of this game, you know? Like, he was never to this hive as fast as he would have wanted, or his upgrades. Never really got to add in either lurkers or ultras wherever he wanted to go. So he got kind of stuck, and eventually ByuN was able to have the right amount of units at the right place. Actually got a lot of momentum there, killing 2 bases. I thought he would get this 3rd one, but it looks like DRG will hold on to that for a little while longer, and he needs it. He does have 60 drones still left, so it's mining, right? But unfortunately, he's down to 50 army supply against ByuN's 140.
Yep, almost 3 times the size is the army of ByuN at this point, as he finds a few more drones. He's going to grab a couple of overlords. The hatchery is going to go down once again. The pause that we had before was actually related to the wrist of ByuN. He just said he couldn't really feel his hands. They were a bit numb. That's why he needed a moment, but it seems like that was the right moment to take that break, because he came out guns blazing, displaying just fantastic micro here. This is pretty much it for DongRaeGu. A last-ditch effort, but these few Hydras simply don't stand a chance against the Marines and Marauders of ByuN.